thank you very much for Greenlight inviting us to speak today. And one of the things I thought about when I was asked to come and speak here is, what do I come and talk to you guys about? So for those of you that know Criteo, there might be some slides in here that you might have heard of before, but what I'm trying to focus on today is really give you a story about the company and about what we do, our core product, and hopefully some new products that we're releasing towards the end of this year. But obviously, the main thing is to talk to you about Christmas. So I hope you appreciate the effort that I've gone into with my slides, because I've really tried to take the Christmas theme on its head. So I really hope you appreciate that. That was supposed to be a laugh. There we go, I got one. So a little bit more about me. My name's John. I lead UK agency sales at Criteo. You can find out a little bit more about me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter. And when I'm not talking about the future of display, I like to talk about music and Man United. So if later on, if we're out in the refreshments, here we go. If later on we're out in the refreshments area and I'm starting to bore you with my chat about display, then please change the conversation to music or Man United, and I'll quite happily talk about that. So could I have a quick show of hands in the room of people that have worked with Criteo or are working with Criteo? Have a show of hands if you work with Criteo. Okay. So that's good, because hopefully all of you are going to find this quite interesting in terms of what I talk about. So to give you a bit of background, Criteo is the global leader in personalised retargeting, or we now like to think of it as more as kind of performance display, as we don't just do retargeting now. But to give you a bit more background on why the company's been so successful and why we've grown so quickly, it's all around kind of the tech focus. So we're not really seen as a startup anymore. The company started in 2008 really in the UK, which is when we started the personalised retargeting product. And from 2008 to now, we're now about 600 employees. We'll probably be 750 by the end of the year. So it's phenomenal growth. And the reason why we've been so successful is because we maintain a tech focus within the business. So we probably don't have as many engineers as Google, but we have a lot, and we only work on one product. So if you take 40% of that 600 staff working on one product, that should hopefully make a pretty sophisticated product. So that's what I'm going to tell you more about. We work with lots of different clients, but there's been some really, really big sectors for us where Criteo has kind of really taken off. Retail, travel, and classifieds have been the kind of biggest sectors for Criteo. So hopefully a lot of the examples I'm going to talk to you about will be retail, and I can kind of tell from some of the name badges I've seen that there's quite a few retailers in the room, so that should hopefully be quite relevant. The other thing to note is that we retain the majority of our clients. So I've put the number of head-to-head tests on there as well, because we're quite happy to go up and be tested against other solutions. And I think one of the things to note is that when I speak to people about retargeting or remarketing, there's so many companies that offer that now. And I used to work at a network and we offered retargeting, but if I compare that to what Criteo does, it's completely different. And I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you'll see why it's completely different. So I'm going to give a real kind of basic lesson on how it works, because how about if I ask another question? How many of you have seen a personalised or been retargeted with an ad? Surely that's got to be more hands. There we go. So that's good. So there's a real basic form of retargeting which lots of companies offer, which is, I've used a Dell example here, but you've gone to a client's website, you may have browsed lots of different products on that site, you've left, and that company finds you again and they show you a display ad. Now that ad could be have a sale message, but it tends to be generic, right? It's not product specific. And what Criteo specialises in is personalised ads. So we not only look at what the users looked at, but we also looked at what other users are looking at and purchasing. And when we find that user again, we don't just show them the product that they viewed, but crucially to what Criteo does is we show them recommendations. So think of it a bit like an Amazon or an iTunes. Our recommendation algorithm isn't based on rule-based, i.e. you've looked at t-shirts, therefore we'll show you more t-shirts. What Criteo looks at is statistical data. So if I've gone on to Dell and I've looked at a laptop. But everyone else that looked at that same laptop went on to buy a printer. That's the type of thing we'd show in the banner. So it's looking at the statistical data and using that to drive the best performance for the banners. The recommendation engine is key, right? I've said this already, but this is some kind of data to back it up. This is not a product that just drives people back that we're going to purchase anyway. These stats show that in retail, fashion and travel, 3 of our biggest sectors, that more people are actually purchasing the recommended product than they are purchasing the product that they previously viewed. When you think about that, now retargeting becomes a channel that is used for crossing and upselling and not just a retention tool. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the way that we source our inventory. There's 2 ways in which we source inventory, and some of that is done through exchanges, so things like the Google AdX. But the majority of where we source our inventory is done direct with publishers, and it's these publisher agreements which I think help improve the performance of our display ads. And the big thing for advertising agencies is that they love Criteo because we take the risk. We're buying all this inventory from some really, really premium slots, and we're buying on a CPM, and we're only charging you guys if a user clicks. So in order for us to do that, we've got to make those banners work pretty hard. So that's a really, really key point about Criteo is we take the risk, we buy this inventory on a CPM, and we sell it to our clients on a CPC. So I put some Christmas creative. I did think about putting some moving ones in there, but it tells the same story with static. But I'll tell you a little bit more about how the creative works. So there's some confusion about where Criteo sits. Is it a search product? Is it a display product? Is it an affiliate product? And some of that comes in because it's not a typical display solution. Setting up Criteo is not like just booking a display campaign. There's more complexities. So to build a creative, which we do, we need a product feed. So we can take a Google feed, or we can take a feed that you use for affiliates or whatever it may be. And we build that feed and we build those creatives dynamically on the fly. So every user potentially sees a different product, and every user sees a different selection of recommendations. The key thing to remember about creative is that it needs to be functional on brand. I can probably hold my hand up now and say that we're probably never going to win a Cannes Lion for creative. But the key thing about this is it's obviously a performance product, and the fact that we're building completely custom creative for brands like Waitrose, John Lewis, M&S, shows that we can do a pretty good job on that. So I've talked to you a bit about how the product works, the recommendation engine. I've talked to you about what the banners look like and where they're placed. So now I want to tell you about some of the clever stuff you can do with the platform once you're in, and some of the cool things you can do to optimize. And this is obviously particularly relevant for our advertisers during peak periods. So it's not just a case of starting with Criteo, you set your CPC and off you go. There's more complex things you can do. So one of the things we get complimented on is the transparency of data within our dashboard. The first thing to say is sometimes when I present this slide is that people feel that, oh God, I don't really want to look through or learn another interface with loads of different numbers and graphs telling me lots of different figures. So the first thing to say is you can be as hands-on or as hands-off as you like. If you want to get into the numbers and manage CPCs, you can go in and do it a bit like you might do with AdWords. If you don't, then you don't have to, because there's someone at Criteo who will do it for you. But the key thing to remember about this is you've got access to all the data in real time. You can add new things into the columns. So, for example, around Christmas, you might not want to just look at things like clicks, impressions, CTR, cost to sell. You might want to look at something like impression win percentage, which obviously over the Christmas period is potentially going to decrease or increase depending on the competition in the market. So some of the other clever things you can do within that interface is set different CPCs for different things. So the first thing is we split users into different categories. So we understand that clients will come to us and say, look, we might put a different value on a user that's opted out of basket or has maybe bought from the site before versus a user that's never bought from the site before, or perhaps bounced off the homepage or something like that. So being able to set a different CPC based on what segment you put those users in is something that clients and agencies have found really, really valuable. And that's just a really basic format. It gets much, much more complicated than that. You can split You can go right down to how many product pages they've viewed on quite an individual and granular level, if you want to do so. The next thing, which has been a real, I guess, game changer for retail clients, is being able to set a different CPC based on the products that make more margin to the business. So, if you're thinking about this, I mean, I don't know many display banners where you could have 4 different products and in that banner, and you could be paying a different CPC within that same banner. So that's really impressive, and I think it's one of the things to note that advertisers and agencies need to take hold of, particularly around Christmas period, if they're pushing certain line items. John Lewis is a classic case where a lot of people will probably know that John Lewis don't make a lot of margin off of Apple products, for example. So they might want to push their own branded products, which makes sense. So they can put a higher CPC for those products, and the algorithm will try and push those products into the recommendation engine and into the banners. The key thing about that is that, if you put your own branded products into the banner and you put a higher CPC, the algorithm learns. So if John Lewis, for example, had put some own branded cufflinks in there, which nobody wants to buy, the algorithm learns and it drops that off. So yes, it allows you to push different products, but it's not going to sacrifice the performance of the campaign just to push products that you might make a high margin on, but nobody wants to buy. So it learns that way. But all of this data as well is provided in our interface, so you could actually, by the end of a campaign or through a campaign, have lots of different CPCs against lots of different product categories. The other thing to note as well is one of the developments of the fact that we're working more and more with agencies now is we've started to partner with a lot of the bid management platforms. So whether that's Marin and Kenshu, who are kind of, I guess, 2 of the leaders, or whether that's partnering with Greenlight, who have their own bid management platform, we have the facilities to do that. And particularly when you're managing a Criteo campaign, which, to be fair, at times can be quite time intensive, it's really, really valuable for the agency to be able to use a bid management tool or an interface that they are used to using, and to be able to pull that data in one report, look at unified reporting, look at cross-channel attribution, and be able to measure everything within the same interface. So Christmas strategy. There's kind of 3 things that we speak to our clients about during the Christmas period. And it really depends on them in terms of how we analyse this and when they find their peak trading hours. Obviously it depends if we've got previous Christmas data or not. But the 3 things I would want you guys to remember if you're looking at if you're working with Criteo and you're thinking about working with Criteo and what to think about over Christmas. The first thing to think about is increased conversion rate. Typically, from the feedback we get from clients, is they get an increase in conversion rate over Christmas. So therefore, they might be prepared to pay more for traffic coming to their website, which kind of makes sense. So do we need to adjust our CPC strategy based on the fact that we know that users are going to convert more? So therefore, we want to make the maximum chance out of this peak period where we get the most conversions and drive as much traffic as possible. On the flip side of that, everyone's trying to do that, right? So there's competition for inventory. So you're going to need to think about your strategy and how it compares to every other retailer that's trying to bid for that inventory as well. And not just within Criteo interface, but also DSPs or any of the different technologies where you're able to bid on that inventory, particularly obviously with the wrath of the growth, if you like, of real-time bidding and exchanges and how that works. And the other thing is creative look and feel. So making sure that you guys, is there an incentive or a coupon or a message that you need to get across during Christmas? Is there something around delivery? I know I think it was one of the Google guys talked about any kind of delivery dates in terms of picking up from store, or when is the time, the cut-off date for delivery. Those kind of things all help enhance your Christmas strategy. So those are the 3 things I'd want you to consider when using Criteo over Christmas. So what's next from Criteo? We have a really, really great product for users that have been to your website before. So naturally, the next thing we're trying to look at is, okay, well, we understand about what users do on your website. We can see kind of where they go to and the products they view. So how can we take some of that and try and attract perhaps users that have not been to your site before? So the big thing for Criteo is kind of looking at the full kind of display solution. So at the moment, as I said, we split active users, if you like, users that have been to your site into different categories, and we have a great strategy for bringing them back to your site and helping them convert. The next thing is further up the funnel, right? So we'll look at dormant users, users that potentially haven't been to your site for 30 days. What can we do to bring them back to the site? And the next thing is obviously new users, users that have never been to the site before. So unfortunately, I kind of wanted to tell you more about some of the stuff we're doing, but I'm a little bit limited about what I can say. Certainly if you work with Criteo, you're going to be hearing a lot about these new products in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, because it's likely that we'll roll it out with the existing advertisers first. But certainly I would think towards the back end of this year, you'll start seeing more of a closed loop display solution where you've got your retargeting, you'll perhaps pay more at the start to get a user to your site in the first place, and then you've taken down the funnel, right, from upper funnel, from bringing them to the site in the first place, then they fall into the retargeting pool, and then you can move them back down the funnel to eventually converting. And that's it.